The Addams family, with its dark humor and quirky cast, has become an unforgettable cultural icon. Now, join us as we pull back the curtain on the stars who once brought this legend to life, only to be taken by shocking tragedies, from mysterious illnesses to sudden deaths. Let's uncover their stories and honor their legacy. Jackie Kugan as Uncle Fester. John Leslie. Jackie Kugan was born on October 26, 1914 in Los Angeles, California. In 1964, when Jackie was 50 years old, he returned to the peak of fame with his role as Uncle Fester in the television series The Addams Family, the eccentric, bald-headed character who brought laughs with his bizarre antics. Jackie had long been a legendary figure, the orphan boy in Charlie Chaplin's The Kid, 1921. He became one of Hollywood's first and brightest child stars during the silent film era. He reportedly earned up to $4 million before he turned 21. But when his father died in a tragic car accident in 1935, Jackie discovered that his entire fortune had been spent by his mother and stepfather on furs, diamonds, and luxury cars. The drawn-out lawsuit left him nearly bankrupt, and he eventually received only $126,000. This case led the U.S. to pass the Kugan Act, the first law protecting the financial rights of child actors. In his personal life, Kugan went through 4 marriages, 3 of which ended in divorce. His first marriage to screen star Betty Grable, 1937 to 1939, fell apart after just 2 years. His later relationships were also turbulent, and the death of his son Christopher in a motorcycle accident in 1990 brought deep sorrow to the Kugan family. His last wife, Dodie, was the only one by his side until the very end. Though once Hollywood's golden boy, Jackie's final years were spent quietly in an old house in Santa Monica, valued at around $800,000. Jackie Kugan died of heart failure on March 1, 1984, at the age of 69, after years battling heart disease, strokes, and kidney failure. His funeral was open to the public, and former co-star John Astin delivered the eulogy. Carolyn Jones as Morticia Addams. Carolyn Sue Jones was born on April 28, 1930, in Amarillo, Texas. When she took on the role of Morticia Addams in The Addams Family, 1964, she was just 34 years old, at the height of her beauty and talent. With her gothic allure and aristocratic grace, Carolyn became the perfect embodiment of the iconic Morticia, forever etched into the memory of 1960s American television. But behind the glamour lay a life shadowed by sorrow. Carolyn didn't grow up in a loving, complete family. Her father abandoned them when she was 4, and she spent her childhood battling severe asthma, which left her isolated. Yet those years fueled her desire to perform, and she joined the Pasadena Playhouse when she was only 17. In 1957, she received an Oscar nomination for The Bachelor Party and won a Golden Globe in 1959 as one of the industry's most promising stars. At the time, her net worth was estimated at nearly $1 million, a significant amount back then. Still, fame couldn't fill the emptiness. Carolyn went through 4 marriages, all ending in separation. Her longest-lasting marriage to producer Aaron Spelling, 1953 to 1964, collapsed just as she reached stardom with the Addams Family. She had no children and never maintained another long-term relationship. Over time, the film industry turned its back on her, labeling her difficult to work with, and noting her reliance on prescription drugs to keep up appearances. In 1981, fate struck a cruel blow. She was diagnosed with colon cancer. Despite her weakening health, she pushed herself to play Myrna Clegg in Capital, even acting from a wheelchair. She kept her illness secret, telling colleagues it was just a stomach ulcer, and worked until she could no longer walk. By July 1983, Carolyn fell into a coma at her home in West Hollywood. She passed away on August 3, 1983, when she was 53 years old. Her body was cremated, and her ashes were placed next to her mother's grave in Anaheim, California. Lisa Loring as Wednesday Addams. Lisa Ann DeCinces, known professionally as Lisa Loring, was born on February 16, 1958, on Kwajalein Atoll, Marshall Islands. In 1964, when Lisa was just 6 years old, she became an American TV icon as Wednesday Addams, the stone-faced girl with braided hair and a love for spiders in the classic series The Addams Family. The role catapulted her to fame far too early, but it was also the beginning of a life filled with darkness. Lisa grew up in a broken home. Her mother, the only constant presence in her life, died of alcoholism when Lisa was just 16 years old. That loss, compounded by the pressure of early fame, led her down a path of troubled choices. She got married at 15, divorced at 16, and became a teenage single mother. The years that followed brought more broken marriages. The most publicized was her union with adult film actor Jerry Butler, whom she met while working as a makeup artist on a pornographic film in 1987. Their relationship became tabloid fodder after Butler admitted to being addicted to the adult film lifestyle, secretly attending explicit photo shoots without Lisa's knowledge. Their marriage ended in 1992, along with what remained of Lisa's reputation and acting career. Her struggles continued. She battled heroin addiction, entered rehab, and temporarily lost custody of her child. In her final years, Lisa lived in a modest home in Los Angeles, valued at around $600,000. On January 28, 2023, Lisa Loring died of a stroke caused by high blood pressure just weeks before she would have turned 65. A childhood icon faded into quiet obscurity, much like the stage lights that had long forgotten her. Ted Cassidy as Lurch. Theodore Crawford Cassidy was born on July 31, 1932, in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. In 1964, when Ted was just 32 years old, he left an unforgettable mark on television screens as Lurch, the towering, stone-faced but surprisingly lovable butler in the Addams Family. With his 6 feet 8 inches height and hauntingly deep voice, Ted turned the line, "You rang?" into a classic catchphrase. But behind that stoic face was a deeply thoughtful soul. As a child, Ted was a school prodigy. He entered 3rd grade when he was just 6 years old and played professional basketball as a teenager. After graduating from Stetson University, he worked as a radio announcer and played the organ at diners to make ends meet. Yet Hollywood only saw him as a freak, a figure with a strange appearance fit for monsters, robots, or aliens. Even though he wrote scripts, composed poetry, and had a philosophical mind, Ted Cassidy was remembered mostly for voiceless roles, or for providing the roars of the Hulk in The Incredible Hulk. His personal life was just as lonely. His marriage ended in divorce, and although he had 2 children, very little is publicly known about his family life, only further emphasizing his isolated image. In his Woodland Hills home, valued at about $500,000, Ted lived surrounded by unproduced scripts and the sorrow of a talent boxed in by his looks. In 1979, Ted Cassidy underwent heart surgery to remove a benign tumor. At first, it seemed he had made it through, but complications brought him back to the hospital just days later. On January 16, 1979, he passed away at the age of 46, a death far too early and far too quiet. His ashes were buried in the backyard of his home. No public funeral, no red carpet, just the silence, like the voiceless roles he so often played. Marie Blake as Grandmama. Edith Marie Blossom MacDonald, better known by her stage name Blossom Rock, was born on August 21, 1895 in Philadelphia. When she played Grandmama in the hit series The Addams Family, 1964 to 1966, she was already 69 years old, the oldest among the main cast. Yet she brought a rebellious, humorous, and mystical spirit to the role of the family's eccentric grandmother. However, Blossom Rock's real life was far less joyful than her on-screen persona. The older sister of musical film star Jeanette MacDonald, Blossom once performed in vaudeville acts with her sister in their youth. But while Jeanette rose to stardom at MGM, Blossom quietly took a different path, adopting the stage name Marie Blake to build her own career, mostly in small supporting roles. For nearly 3 decades, she was a familiar but rarely spotlighted figure, her most notable role being switchboard operator Sally in 9 Dr. Kildare films. She married fellow actor Clarence Rock, and they performed together as the act Rock and Blossom. Their marriage lasted over 30 years, but remained childless. When Clarence passed away in 1960, Blossom lived alone in a small house in Los Angeles. In 1967, a sudden stroke robbed her of her ability to speak. This prevented her from joining the 1977 reunion Halloween with the new Addams family, though she is believed to have quietly watched it from her bed at the National Film and Television Home. Blossom Rock passed away on January 14, 1978, at the age of 82. Her body was buried at Forest Lawn Memorial Park in Glendale, California, not far from many other artists who once lit up the golden age of Hollywood. Her net worth at the time was estimated at $300,000, most of it from the modest home where she lived alone during her final decade. Ken Weatherwax as Pugsley Addams. Kenneth Patrick Weatherwax was born on September 29, 1955, in Los Angeles, into a family of performers. When Ken was just 9 years old, he was cast as Pugsley Addams, the chubby, mischievous, and eccentric son in the black-and-white TV series The Addams Family, 1964 to 1966. Alongside co-star Lisa Loring, Wednesday, Ken became a fixture in the public's memory of the strange and hilarious Addams Family. However, early success came with a harsh curse. After the show ended, Ken Weatherwax was immediately typecast as Pugsley. No one wanted to hire him for other roles, and Ken himself gradually lost interest in acting. After being expelled from multiple schools for uncontrollable behavior, he enlisted in the military at 17, hoping to escape the shadow of Hollywood. He never married and had no children. He lived quietly in a home in West Hills, California, worth about $400,000, filled with old props and childhood memories. According to family members, Ken struggled with depression, was briefly homeless, and often avoided the media. On December 7, 2014, Ken Weatherwax died of a heart attack at the age of 59. There was no grand funeral. It wasn't until 3 years later that, thanks to a community fundraising campaign by the dearly departed Tours and Artifact Museum, his remains were finally interred at Valhalla Cemetery in North Hollywood. Part of his ashes now rest on display at the museum, a quiet reminder that the little boy who once made America laugh faded away in silence. Felix Silla as Cousin It. Felix Anthony Silla was born on January 11, 1937, in Roccacasale, a small mountain village in Italy. In 1964, when Felix was 27 years old, he made television history with his role as Cousin It, the tiny, hairy relative of the Addams family in The Addams Family. Standing at just 3 feet 11 inches, Felix was completely hidden beneath layers of costume, creating a character that was both mysterious and lovable. But that same fame also put a period on the kinds of serious roles he would never be offered. Before entering Hollywood, Felix was a skilled circus performer, showcasing horseback riding, trapeze, and acrobatics with Ringling Brothers and Barnum and Bailey. With masterful physical skills, he became an ideal stuntman and physical actor for odd characters, from the robot Twiki in Buck Rogers in the 25th Century, to an alien in Meatballs 2, and even an Ewok in Star Wars, Return of the Jedi, 1983. Still, despite his talent, Felix rarely showed his face on screen. Nearly all his roles relied on his small stature, which boxed in his acting career. Many in the industry remembered him more as a strange-bodied performer than a true actor, a label that often frustrated him. He once said his favorite role was Litvak in The Black Bird, one of the rare times he got to express intensity and emotional depth. Off-screen, Felix Silla's life was not without challenges. Despite difficulties in his marriage, he remained with his wife Sue and raised 2 children. His home in Las Vegas, worth about $500,000, was filled with props, behind-the-scenes photos, and fan mail. On April 16, 2021, Felix Silla passed away at age 84 from pancreatic cancer. He died peacefully, leaving behind a legacy of laughter and respect from the film community. Margaret Hamilton as Granny Frump. Margaret Brainerd Hamilton was born on December 9, 1902, in Cleveland, Ohio. When she took on the role of Granny Frump, Morticia's mother in the Addams Family, 1965, she was 63 years old and already an immortal screen icon thanks to her role as the Wicked Witch of the West in The Wizard of Oz, 1939. With her petite 5-foot frame, deep voice, and piercing eyes, she carved into audiences' minds one of the most legendary villains, so much so that children would avoid her in real life out of fear. But the real Margaret Hamilton was nothing like her terrifying on-screen persona. She was a single mother, once a kindergarten teacher, an animal lover, and deeply committed to children's charities. After divorcing her husband Pomemeroy in 1938 due to physical abuse, she raised their son Tony on her own and never remarried. She lived independently and was often involved in community efforts. The greatest accident of her life happened on the set of The Wizard of Oz. While filming her fiery exit from Munchkinland, a mistimed pyrotechnic effect caused her to suffer second-degree burns on her face and third-degree burns on her hand. 6 weeks in the hospital didn't break her spirit, but from then on she refused to perform any scene involving fire. Despite the physical and emotional damage, she never sued the studio because she understood she was just a small part of Hollywood's harsh machine. In her later years, she lived modestly in a small home in Gramercy Park, New York, valued at around $500,000, with royalties and minor acting roles as her income. Sadly, on May 16, 1985, Margaret Hamilton died of a heart attack at the age of 82, after spending 6 months in a Connecticut nursing home. Stanley Addams as Illa Clary. Stanley Addams, born Stanley Abramowitz, was born on April 7, 1915 in New York City. In 1964, when Stanley was 49 years old, he appeared in The Addams Family as Illa Clary, a bizarre character that perfectly embodied Addams's signature blend of humor and dark satire. Throughout his career, Addams was often cast in eccentric supporting roles, from a talking carrot in Lost in Space, to pool hustler Sure Shot Wilson in The Odd Couple, to space trader Cyrano Jones in Star Trek, a role that made him a cult icon among sci-fi fans. Beyond acting, Stanley was also a prolific TV writer, contributing to major series like Gunsmoke, Bonanza, The Flying Nun, and Star Trek. Behind the smiles and audience laughter, Addams battled undiagnosed and untreated bipolar disorder. A chronic back injury from an old accident worsened his mental condition. Though his career was steady, he felt confined by his physical appearance and acting style, often overwhelmed by the very path he had chosen. Living in a Los Angeles home worth about $300,000, Stanley became increasingly reclusive and depressed. On April 27, 1977, just 20 days after his 62nd birthday, Stanley Addams took his own life using a .22 caliber pistol. In his suicide note, he explained that chronic physical pain had made life unbearable. His ashes were scattered in the Pacific Ocean, ending a life of talent and suffering. He left behind an ex-wife, a son, a daughter, and the silent grief of audiences who once cherished him on screen. Don Rickles as Claude. Don Rickles was born on May 8, 1926, in Queens, New York. In 1964, when Don was 38 years old, he appeared in The Addams Family as Claude. Though he only appeared in one episode, Rickles became an unforgettable name to TV audiences with his sharp wit, razor-tongued insults, and the rare ability to mock every social class while still making everyone laugh. He rose to national fame as Mr. Warmth, an ironic nickname for a man known for roasting everyone, from races and professions to presidents. Rickles began on small comedy stages after serving in the U.S. Navy during World War II. A career breakthrough came when he jokingly insulted Frank Sinatra, who surprisingly loved it and propelled Rickles into the Las Vegas spotlight. That moment launched him into legend status in stand-up comedy, even as critics attacked his humor for being offensive and aggressive. Despite a gambling addiction that nearly bankrupted him in the 1970s, Rickles revived his career through his standout role in Casino, 1995, alongside Robert De Niro and Joe Pesci, and especially as the voice of Mr. Potato Head in Toy Story. This character won over a whole new generation of fans with its warm charm, far from Rickles' usual biting image. Thanks to these roles, his net worth was estimated at $30 million by the time of his passing. In his private life, Rickles had one of Hollywood's rare success stories. He married Barbara Sklar in 1965 and remained with her for over 50 years until she passed away on their wedding anniversary in 2021. Still, his family endured heartbreak. His son Larry died from pneumonia at age 41, a wound Don never fully healed from. Despite multiple surgeries after developing necrotizing fasciitis in 2013, Rickles continued touring across America until his final days. He refused to retire, refused to slow down. Don Rickles passed away on April 6, 2017, at age 90, from kidney failure at his Los Angeles home. He was buried at Mount Sinai Cemetery, resting among Jewish cultural legends. Unused recordings of his voice were preserved by Disney and used in Toy Story 4, 2019. A touching farewell to Hollywood's most lovable, angry potato. Frank Nelson as Mr. Pomemeroy. Frank Brandon. Nelson was born on May 6, 1911. In 1964, when Frank was 53 years old, he appeared in The Addams Family as Mr. Pomemeroy, a cranky service worker, matching the character type he became famous for, sarcastic, comedic, and unforgettable. Frank began his career at age 15, performing in a Denver radio show where he impersonated a 30-year-old man. By the 1940s and 50s, he was a staple of Jack Benny's programs. He often played sales clerks or service employees who were polite to everyone, except Benny's character. That biting delivery became his signature, helping him appear in over 6 seasons of I Love Lucy, The Jetsons, The Flintstones, and countless animated series. Despite his popularity, Frank remained trapped in one kind of role for life. He rarely received lead parts or dramatic opportunities. At times, he clashed with producers in hopes of changing his image, but was always denied. These frustrations left a mark, and he once described himself as just a shadow repeating one line. Frank's personal life, however, was unusually calm. He was married to actress Mary Lansing from 1933 until his death, a 53-year marriage. The couple had no children and lived quietly in a Hollywood home valued at about $500,000. Starting in 1985, Frank Nelson battled cancer. After a year of private treatment, he passed away on September 12, 1986, at age 75. He was buried at Forest Lawn Memorial Park in Glendale, alongside many of Hollywood's greatest, Peter Leeds as Oscar Weber. Peter Leeds was born on May 30, 1917, in Bayonne, New Jersey. In 1964, when Peter was 47 years old, he appeared in The Addams Family as Oscar Weber, a minor character whose calm demeanor contrasted hilariously with the Addams' eccentricity. During the 1950s and 60s, Peter was a golden face on American television, making over 8,000 appearances and working with giants like Bob Hope, Lucille Ball, Carol Burnett, and Jack Benny. He wasn't just a TV actor, he was also a Broadway performer, a talented voice actor, and a sought-after comedy partner. On radio, he starred in more than 3,000 shows, becoming a legend in American entertainment broadcasting. But beyond the spotlight was a lonely personal life. Though he joined Bob Hope on 14 USO tours and shared the Broadway stage with Mickey Rooney in Sugar Babies, 1979, Peter's career faded in later years. A quiet feud with a major production studio cost him new opportunities. Around the same time, his 34-year marriage to Pat Leeds ended in silence, leaving him alone in a $600,000 home in Los Angeles, a place that was once his family's center and later his last refuge. Peter Leeds died on November 12, 1996, at age 79, due to cancer. Though there was no public memorial, his legacy lives on in the hearts of audiences who still smile at his small but delightful performances. Hugh Sanders as Bosley Swain. Hugh Sanders, born Howard William Sanders, was born on March 13, 1911, in East St. Louis, Illinois. In 1964, when Hugh was 53 years old, he appeared in The Addams Family as Bosley Swain, a one-episode character who stood out with his stern presence, in stark contrast to the bizarre Addams household. A graduate of Northwestern University's Medill School of Journalism, Hugh worked in radio broadcasting before moving to Hollywood in 1949. In less than 2 decades, he appeared in over 70 films, most memorably as Dr. Reynolds in To Kill a Mockingbird, 1962. A small role remembered for its quiet humanity. But Hugh Sanders's real life took a darker turn. A failed marriage with Dorothy Alsop, marked by mutual accusations of infidelity, left deep personal scars. Toward the end of his career, a heated confrontation with a colleague on set reportedly cost him several major roles. Rumors of an affair with a director's wife were never proven, but the scandal damaged his already fragile career. On January 9, 1966, Hugh Sanders died suddenly of a heart attack at his Los Angeles home, valued at around $300,000. He passed away at just 54 years old, a time when many of his peers were still riding high in their careers. George Barrows as Gorggo. George D. Barrows was born on February 7, 1914, in New York, a largely unknown name, yet an indispensable figure in Hollywood's monster movie world. In 1964, when George was 50 years old, he played Gorggo in a single episode of The Addams Family, another role buried under thick fur and a forgettable mask. For nearly his entire career, Barrows appeared on screen hidden in gorilla suits he built himself, portraying strange creatures and monsters. Most famously, Ro-Man in Robot Monster, 1953, a so-called B-movie classic, mocked by critics but immortalized by its unmatched weirdness. As the son of veteran actor Henry A. Barrows, George might have pursued more conventional roles, but his towering physique led to lifelong typecasting. Hollywood, in all its glamour, stamped him with the label monster and never peeled it off. In dozens of films, he appeared without credit, without applause, just the man inside the fur. Barrows handcrafted intricate gorilla suits, one of which is now on display at the Natural History Museum of Los Angeles County, a late tribute to a silent artist. Still, success never truly embraced him. Trapped in the monster identity, George slipped into alcoholism, suffered a failed marriage, and watched unproduced scripts collect dust in a modest $300,000 home in Los Angeles. There were no scandals, no tax evasion headlines, just the quiet heartbreak of an artist whose passion was crushed by perception. In a rare interview, he once said, "Sometimes I wonder if I ever really existed, or if I was just a shadow in the audience's eye. George Barrows passed away on October 17, 1994, at the age of 80, after years of solitude. He gave both his body and soul to the strange, surreal world of cinema. The legacy of the Addams family lives on through the stars who left behind unforgettable marks, even as their real lives were filled with heartbreak. Which character from this delightfully strange family is your favorite? Let us know in the comments, and don't forget to like and share to help honor their memory.